This is the Inside Data Center podcast. We talk to the people who power the data center sector to give you insider info on everything happening in DC today. Here's your host, Andy Davis.
Welcome to the Inside Data Center podcast. Today I'm joined by Jim Hart, CEO of BCS Consultancy. Afternoon, Jim.
Afternoon, how are you?
I'm well. We were just laughing before we went online. The last time we did this was 2022. We went through a stage of talking about every report you did over, a 12-month period. And a long time ago. And when you think about it, and we'll cover it, like quite a bit's changed since then, hasn't it?
It's certainly moved on. You could say that. I think probably in the last 5 years we've seen more change in this industry than I have in my previous 20 years.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's a crazy time. And every time I do a new post about some kind of investment, it just makes me think of how rapidly this has changed. And we don't really sit back and talk about it, which is why doing things like this is good. And we're obviously going to cover off your very recently released summer report, which is always a good snapshot for me of what the industry's thinking at any specific time and about some of the challenges. Before we do that, for anyone that hasn't listened to any of our previous episodes, do you want to just give a quick intro of obviously who you are and what your role is at BCS?
Yeah. I'm Jim Hart. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of BCS. We are a data center specialist in program, cost and project management. And as I say, we are experts in the data center field in terms of the deployment and development.
And very busy at the moment.
Getting busier as well.
Which again we're going to cover, which is another point that always makes me laugh about the bubble, and we'll cover the bubble. You know, how big is this bubble ever going to get? I think, or is it even a bubble? Is another question. But when I read through your report recently, it picks out 3 key trends, and I thought it'd be good for us to have a little look at each one of those. And obviously, people can go away and read the report themselves after we've released the episode. But it looks at demand, AI readiness, and the skills shortage. Again, all really key challenges that we're facing at the moment, and obviously power is related to a lot of that as well, which I'm sure we'll cover. But 92% of respondents expect demand to rise in 2025. 0% expect it to fall, which I think is a very clear evidence of where we're at as an industry right now.
No, absolutely. And I think if you just take a snapshot of the industry and see where we are, obviously over the last kind of 2 years, we've had this rush to AI and the provision of high density data centers to provide for that. What we sometimes forget is the fact that business as usual, cloud services, etc., that is carrying on, and demand is growing underneath that as well. So where you look at some of the markers in terms of forecasts of CAGRs, they're changing on a monthly basis, and trying to keep track of it is incredibly difficult. And forecasting where the market is going to go, again, is increasingly difficult. I think, the beginning of this year, we had the blip with Microsoft, and I think everybody took a little bit of a step back there. And I mean, for us, it was kind of with our clients, it was a 4 million hole in our budget, our projections. But such is the state of the market, we filled that, and we will exceed our budget by about 10-15% this year. So again, that's an indication of where we are in the market. I think the biggest issue that we have is how we can keep up with demand, and making sure that we still have this fairly conservative approach in terms of the way we build. You referenced a bubble earlier on. Obviously, some of us older ones have been through that many years ago, and there's always a fear of that happening again. But the main difference is that clients are not building speculatively. They are building to requirements, to lease arrangements, to space that's already been undertaken. So I don't think we're in the same position. And again, you see where Microsoft pulled back in the market, it was very quickly filled by others that were also seeking space. As I say, I think the key issue is actually how do we keep up with that demand? How do we make sure that the quality levels are coming through? How do we make sure that actually we're getting the right skills into the marketplace to deliver?
And have you seen that customers are evolving as well? The industry is obviously changing. There's new customers out there. There's an evolution of customers. You mentioned cloud is kind of forgotten now, even though it's a massive driver of this industry. But from a customer perspective, when you see challenges with the hyperscalers, there's more opportunity now to look towards other customers in the market.
What we're seeing is a lot of entrance into the edge territory. And what you're also seeing and what we're experiencing is the bigger players where they've had mergers and acquisitions are really de-merging the smaller data centers, the older data centers that have in stock. And what we're seeing again is that the edge operators and new edge operators are picking these up because they can be repurposed as edge facilities, which is a good thing, because over the last 5 years, there's been a lot of hand-wringing on how we're going to deal with these legacy data centers. But in the main, it looks as though they're being picked up and repurposed for edge purposes. We've seen a lot of younger dynamic entrants into the market. I think a lot of the older established players have been through the cycle. So we're seeing new entrants into their businesses, new thought processes, new ways of doing things. And I think that's absolutely essential. Because again, if you look at the demand, we've got to look at ways in which we can change the way we deliver, change the way we develop in order to make that more efficient, to make sure that we are getting the best use out of the resources that we have in terms of that deployment. The decision cycles are getting quicker, without a shadow of a doubt. But again, we just have to make sure that we've got the checks and balances in place, that we're making those decisions the right decisions. Because if there's too much haste, it's a big capex, it's a big commitment, and we'll repent at leisure.
Yeah, and I've had that conversation before around the speed of this industry, and as capex significantly increases, you've got to have more control over that expenditure, haven't you? You can't take as many risks, but then the flip of that is the demand is there now, and you kind of need that capacity yesterday.
No, absolutely. And one of the key things that we're being asked by clients is, how do we get that rigor in? How do we get those gateways in? How do we get those checkpoints in without slowing down the process? Because absolutely getting to market as quickly as you can is key. So we're working with clients in terms of how we can automate that process, how we can bring in things like AI, taking away the more mundane tasks from our people so they can absolutely concentrate on what they're expert at and really deliver higher value to our clients in terms of helping that decision making. I think as well as also it's how you use the data you have. I think historically it's all been on spreadsheets and not probably used in the correct manner. But again, things like AI, things like Project BI are helping us to really mine that data, understand absolutely what the trends are. I think you're also seeing a change and shift actually going from kind of cost per kilowatt, cost per megawatt to actually TCO models, because the energy usage that's involved now in terms of the overall cost is just absolutely massive. So again, that's a change in the way we make the decisions and the way we look at projects and we look at their viability.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned it earlier about repurposing facilities, and another stat that caught my eye was 85% of facilities are not yet ready for AI heavy workloads. And if we are, I think, again, conversations that you hear is, if we're looking at repurposing these facilities, I don't think there's always that understanding of that's not as easy as it sounds.
No, it's a very specific market that you have to go out to, and you have to look at the densities you can get in these facilities. There's a stat that I read last year that any data center over 7 years old is out of date. Any data center over 9 years old is obsolete. And again, that just goes to show you the rate of change that we've gone through in the last kind of 5-year period. Back in the day, I was doing 600 kilowatt halls, which were massive, and you just wouldn't even consider that now. It's just a few racks. So, again, the scale, the change that's come in place is just altering the industry completely. But nevertheless, this legacy data center issue is a massive challenge. There's a lot of facilities out there that are not fit for purpose. So the absolute challenge is, how do we repurpose that? How do we get the best out of it? Because the other issue is the embedded carbon that you have in these facilities. So demolition is not necessarily the answer. So it's how can we work cleverly in order to repurpose these to get the best out of these facilities.
Yeah, and on the rack density, I was just digging around for one of your other stats. 25% expect rack power to reach 12 to 15 kilowatts this year. So again, that's how the shift is happening, like right before our eyes. It's happening right now inside the halls.
No, absolutely. And I can only see that accelerating. I mean, we've heard announcements from the likes of Google about the 500 kilowatt rack and the 1 megawatt rack, I mean, which is mind-boggling. But not only that, on the horizon, we've got quantum computing that's coming in. And actually to be able to facilitate that and hold that, that's just going to demand even greater tolerances in terms of our construction techniques and demand greater power. So again, I can only see that increasing.
Yeah, again, it's one of those conversations you have all the time, like what's the end game? How big is a rack going to be?
Well, I remember doing the first data hall that was kind of 1,000 watts per meter squared, and they said it's never going to get more dense than that. Moore's law, we can't cool it, And here we are, 7, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 watts per meter squared that we're putting in.
It is crazy. And the infrastructure around, again, the cooling of it, the technology that's around these racks as well, like that obviously has a huge impact on how we design and how we build data centers. It's not just the rack, it's everything, the infrastructure that goes with it.
And that, again, is causing us a challenge because you look at the way chips are evolving and developing, and it seems to be there's a new chip on the market every 2 or 3 months. And we're building facilities that, were designed for chip technology that's probably 3 years past. So again, that's a challenge. How do we build flexibility into our infrastructure in order to cope with this? And it's got to be looked at holistically. You look at the cooling loads that are now going in and how we cool. I mean, I was at a careers fair at a school on Monday, and I had a 14-year-old haranguing me about water usage in data centers and the ecological impact it's having and the energy we use. And again, it's one of the things we're very, very poor at is in terms of telling people what we do and how we're going about things, because I truly believe of the energy intensive industries, we're making the greatest strides in terms of introducing that efficiency, usage of green power, looking at holistic life cycles in that manner. And a lot of it's driven commercially, obviously, but nevertheless, there is a conscience there that this is something we have to do, but we just don't tell people about it. So, for example, how many data centers at the moment are being built with evaporative cooling? Very few. You've got closed loop systems. So again, you're only filling once. So we're solving the water story. In terms of energy, many, many years ago, I used to have a massive tick list of things on site in a data center, 10 kilometers from a motorway and a railway, out the Belmont of the airport. Now it's about where's the green power? Where's the renewable energy? That's where we're going to build the data center. So there's been a massive shift in our thinking and the way we go about things.
Yeah, exactly. And I know there's renewable energy covered in your report as well, and the stats around it. And the one that caught my eye as well on power was 75% support nuclear power as part of the energy mix, but 60% say public opinion is a barrier to adoption. And I think, again, it's a conversation that happens all the time. When we think of nuclear power, we naturally think of a huge nuclear power station. That's what we're used to. That's how we've been fed that information. And now it's not that, but we've got to communicate that, haven't we, externally?
Again, it's working with the community, it's working with government. And this has to be government driven, actually, because it's only going to benefit the business government, because we're going to take loads of load off the grid. We're going to be self-generating. And actually, there's the opportunity to put energy back into the grid that's privately financed. So it's got to be something that's looked at a governmental level. I mean, if you look at the recent making of data centers as critical national infrastructure, they're reacting to something that's 5 years ago. It's not looking ahead. It's not taking into account what needs to come. So great, the planning consent has been made slightly easier. It's been relaxed. But what it doesn't address is how we've solved the fundamental power problem and how we work with governments across Europe in order to solve that.
Yeah, an SMR is obviously a solution, but it's not always a quick solution, is it? So there has to be a multifaceted approach to this problem.
Absolutely, which again, it's got to be a holistic approach. So, government's got to be involved. They've got to stand up and actually do their part, because the grid is actually not fit for purpose. And that's not just the UK, that's probably across Europe. These grids are, 70, 100 years old and just not fit for purpose. They were never built for building these point loads. So that needs to be addressed. So again, it's about forward thinking. It's about sitting down with the right people in the right places and making sure we're making those decisions that are going to at least help us in the next 5 to 10 years, because the development of nuclear facilities, whilst that's on the horizon, it's all relative. It's 5 to 10 years away. So what we're going to do in the interim, you've got Scotland that's essentially turning off wind turbines because they're producing too much energy. So hey ho, what's an answer there? Let's have a look at Scotland. It's
exactly.
We've got to have that kind of thinking, I think, going forward.
Yeah, and you've seen in the UK is a good example, isn't it, of that geographic spread where they're not necessarily come to fruition yet, but the conversations and the planning applications are like, southeast of the UK. I was talking this morning about Kent, people are aware that that's an area. You've obviously got the home counties, you've got Scotland, you've got Manchester, you've got the Midlands. They're starting to move away, which obviously is because of power constraints and other reasons, but it also brings the conversation to new communities, which means we've got to be even better at communicating, because these people are not. If you talk to someone in Slough, they know what a data centre is. They live next to them. But if you're talking to someone in, a mile outside Edinburgh, obviously they're not aware.
No, and it's about what benefits we can bring. So obviously you've got the initial construction phase, which is going to absolutely help local employment. You'll then have the subsidiary industries that come off the back of the data centre that will be longer term. But there's also things like helping the communities. So again, I see a point where a lot of planning and permitting, what are you going to do with the waste heat? Are you going to produce a waste energy centre in order to help the local community, swimming pools, leisure centres, whatever that may be? And I see that coming in. And again, that's something we need to look at. If we look at data centre delivery as a whole, it's becoming far more complex. It used to be just a shed with bits of kit in. We're now looking at a whole infrastructure that goes around it. And we have to be a lot more savvy in terms of the way we go about that and the way we bring communities with us in what we're providing. And again, I go back to the 14-year-old that was haranguing me, and rightly so. I was incredibly impressed by the questions he was asking. He was incredibly well briefed, which suggests that somebody is behind it, nonetheless. But I go back to that 14-year-old. It's about being open. And I turned around to him and said, right, well, we can solve this really, really quickly. I'll take your PlayStation away from you. I'll take your mobile phone away from you. I'll take everything away from you, and you don't need data centers. But they're here. We have all this. This is part of the infrastructure now. This is part of our life going forward. Without data centers, society does not operate. It's as simple as that. So we have to work together to understand how we can integrate, how we communicate better, and how we actually communicate the positives of what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've been talking about it for probably 5 or 6 years, and we have started to do better, and some companies do some great things, I always say it, but still collaboratively, we're not very good at it. It's like that industry conversation, isn't it? It's companies do their bit, some companies do amazing work, some individuals do amazing work, but the industry's got a much bigger voice. We've got to try and communicate together. And I appreciate that's easier said than done, but that's the only way we're going to get a unified message out there to
Absolutely.
the world.
And we've got to get the proper representation at the top table, so our voice is heard. But it goes back again to the way we started as an industry, which was very secretive, very conservative. Nobody was allowed to talk about where data centers were. I can remember, signing a personal NDA with Google that I couldn't talk to anybody about, working on their developments, couldn't tell them about locations. And then the next minute, there's a big splash in the press saying Google's done this. But it all goes back to that. We're very conservative, very secretive. And whilst as an industry, we've massively changed over the last 5 years, that's the one thing that's been stuck in the past, is openness, transparency, and actually selling the sector. And that's not just to the local community, but it's about attracting talent, it's making ourselves attractive, and making sure we're getting the best of the best in what we do.
Totally agree. And that brings us nicely onto skills, my sweet spot. I know you're passionate about it, and your company does great work as well within this area. But 97% of respondents expect talent supply to fall while demand rises. I was wondering what the other 3% are thinking. 81% report the impact is higher labour and operating costs, which again, we're seeing across the market. And 63%, which is interesting, think AI could help ease the skill shortage. It definitely can. And it ties in with some of your points earlier around getting people to do what they're good at and get the admin work, really, for want of putting it a better way, done by technology. But skills still a massive problem for this industry.
It is, and we've got to think of ways we can do things more efficiently and better, and actually start looking at other industries. and starting to understand how they do things and if there's things we can learn. So again, one of the hangovers is from way back when is this perception that you have to have a data center track record to work into data centers. Well, actually, if you look at the complexity and the range of services required now to deliver in a modern day data center, I don't think that really holds as much weight as it used to. I think you have to have a far wider breadth of experience, and it gives us opportunities to bring other experts in. So again, we've got to look at that. But we have to look at delivery models, the way we go about things, using kind of production techniques that they use in automation, manufacturing, things of that nature. AI will definitely help. And everybody tells me that it's going to help, but nobody can tell me exactly how it's going to help. So that's the next thing to come get over. But yeah, if we can take these mundane things, the tick boxes, the form filling, take that away, get that automated, and absolutely getting people concentrated on what they're expert at, then I think we start making improvements. We've got to recognise, we've got to bite the bullet, the fact that demand at the moment is outstripping the amount of people can bring in to deliver. So we've just got to think of ways that we can do it more efficiently, that we can do it better. We've got to think out of the box, and as I say, be more open-minded about bringing people in. Which talent lines can we go into in alternative industries to bring into ours? But again, part of that is making ourselves really attractive. Why would they come to us? And it's not always money. It's about experience, about career development, opportunity to travel. We've got all these things that we can offer that we just don't shout about.
Yeah, I've been having the same conversation internally about hiring ourselves. I really believe you're in a time period in this industry where you're changing the world, and you're part of it. You're part of that the technological revolution, or whatever you want to call it. You can really be part of it, and I don't think we shout about that enough. Like the change period. Yeah, so people compare it, don't they, to the Industrial Revolution and when machinery came in. It's that big a game changer.
Yeah, it is.
We've got to communicate that.
No, absolutely. And again, going back to kind of the school fairs and the university fairs that I do, I used to go on after the likes of Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and they were all sexy IT, and it was just brilliant. And I came on and said, I build data centers. Completely lost the audience. But then I realised, actually, without us, they don't exist. We are that important. And we don't shout about that enough. An earlier comment I made, we're central to how society functions. In this day and age, without data centers, nothing works. So again, we've got to start shouting this from the rooftops, how intrinsic we are to society as a whole and how important we are.
Yeah, definitely. And there's definitely something here. So if anyone's listening, got any ideas, I'm all for it. If we can if we can create some kind of forum for this, let's do it. There's enough people that are passionate about it, and enough people that want to create the change, and maybe it is going to take a few of us to just get this going, I guess. But yeah, we can do a lot.
It's getting a voice. It's not about noise, it's about volume. It's about having a clear message and making sure that we're taking that to society, to the wider communities all over the world, and making sure we're creating an interest, we're creating a buzz, because that's the way we're going to attract people. I was absolutely blown away by the questions 13 and 14-year-olds were asking me on Monday. Some of them was just like, right, I'll go away, I'll think about that, and I'll come back to you. And I've gone back today with a few answers. But it just shows you the way that they think so differently to the way we did. It's just a different world now, and we've got to embrace it.
Yeah, it's the same when I go to UTC and do the work we do with those guys. It drives you, doesn't it? You go away thinking these, and it's why I get frustrated when you get comments around the younger generations, whatever generation it is. I've no idea X, Y, Z. I've no idea, and I don't really care. Exactly, I don't know what it is, but there's so many great young people out there. They just need the opportunities. But you're right in the fact that we need to be able to communicate with these people in order for them to know the opportunities are there, and it's a two-way street. But get out there and meet them, and you will be inspired. Yeah. I promise. There's some amazing young people out there.
No, absolutely, I agree entirely.
Final point on the report. We could talk for most of the day, I'm sure. But yeah, what was it that surprised you most? Was there anything in the report when you read it and you collated all the information and you thought, I didn't expect to see that, or that's higher than what I expected? Anything particular?
Not necessarily surprised, but I think again it's just the upward trend. It goes back to your first point you made about potential bubble. When is it going to end? Where's this going to go? Interestingly, I was talking to Gartner this morning, and they said we don't know either. And they've got 2,500 analysts looking at this, so it's so difficult to predict. And 60% of the stock in the market at the moment was built before 2003. So you've got all that to replace as well, and all that to work on, and the rate of change of technology that's coming through, I just think is astonishing. And back to a point you made earlier, what an exciting place to be. As a youngster, as somebody just starting out in their career, what a fantastic place to be. And I think that for me is just, this report underlined it. I mean, we've been doing this for now in various guises for about 20 years. So we have a lot of data to trend on. And the upward trend probably the last 3-4 years has been the highest that we've ever experienced. And no real negative sentimentality. And we're seeing that trend continue. So things like the skill shortage is there, and it's been there for the last God knows how many years. But the question is, what we're going to do about it. It's all very well identifying it, but what are we going to do about it? What are the things that we're going to introduce collectively that are going to solve that? And it's not just about us. It's consultants, contractors, clients. We've got to work together on this. Look at the pipeline that's got to be delivered. So we've got to do something differently. We've got to look at it differently. And I think people are starting to see that now, and we're starting to have those conversations. But, we go over, 3,000 respondents from various strata of the sector. So we've got all viewpoints in there, but the message is the same. The market continues to grow. Demand is outstripping the ability to supply. So let's do something different.
Yeah, I agree. I think the growth is what always gets me. When you sit back and you look at the scale of that growth, you're talking campuses in the US that are like 25% of the total available capacity in the US for one campus, the whole of America. And that demand, like you say, is gone before it's even built a lot of the time. So yeah, the scale is, it gets me. And like you say, skill, I think people is the biggest inhibitor to growth in this industry. I think what could cause us to plateau is just the lack of available skills. And that's why I think now it's becoming a bit more of a conversation point in the right places, rather than people like us preaching on podcasts. But there you go.
Well, we're trying to do our bit. I mean, 15% of our business, my colleagues are apprentices or are going through an apprenticeship course or going through graduate conversion courses, and we're looking in different places to find talent. Ex-athletes is one of the initiatives we're driving at the moment. We are looking to start actually looking at ex-servicemen and women as well, because talent is talent. Give me somebody that has the ability to learn, that wants to grow, that wants to develop. I can teach them the rest. I can teach them the skills. I can teach them the technical bit. That's not the issue. But clients have to work with us. They can't keep demanding, well, haven't got 20 years of experience, so you're not on my job. But you look in client organisations, and the way that demographic's changing is that there's a lot of young people that are now coming into those organisations that haven't actually delivered a data centre, and that is a risk. So we need to understand again that dynamic and how we're going to manage that going forward.
Yeah, there's definitely a shift, and as I said earlier, you do some great work with the apprentices and the like as well. And I advise any company to have a look at what you do with regards to bringing in new talent to the industry, because you do some amazing work. So well done for that.
Thank you.
And I think that's a good place to end the podcast. I'll put the report in the show notes. So if anyone wants to go away and read it, I recommend you do. There'll be a link in there, so you can just click it and take a read. If anyone wants to speak to you, Jim, best way to get hold of you?
Just either ping me on LinkedIn or drop me an email.
So and we'll direct you that way if they can't find you. Thanks for your time. We'll do it again before 3 years. I will get you your match ball. This is the 4th podcast. I owe Jim a match ball. I'm going to deliver it in October when I go to your offices, if not before. But thanks for your time. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Andy. Interesting as always.